Glenn Jacobs, formerly known as the Big Red Machine Kane, was one of the most iconic, one of the most destructive, but also one of the most influential superstars of the Attitude Era. His presence, his aura, and his destructive ways in WWE was what made him a three-time world champion, a multi-time tag team champion, and now a WWE Hall of Famer. His time in the wrestling business goes all the way back. It goes all the way back to 1992, where he was trained by three people: Dean Malenko, Ray Candy, and Jeff Bradley. He debuted in 1992 under the name Angus King for a promotion called the Central States Wrestling Association in Hannibal, Missouri, which was actually owned and it was ran by Glenn's childhood friend Mark Morton. By December of that year, he ended up working for another promotion called the USWA, the United States Wrestling Association in Memphis, under the name Christmas Creature. And at that time, he went on to have several matches, including challenging Jerry the King Lawler, a fellow WWE Hall of Famer, for the USWA Unified World Heavyweight Championship before leaving the promotion later that month. Now, by March of 1993, Jacobs made a one-off appearance with WCW, losing to another Hall of Famer known as Sting on an episode of WCW Saturday Night, which was filmed in Macon. I think I'm saying that right. Macon, Georgia, under the name Bruiser Mastino. Later that year, he relocated in Tampa, Tampa, Florida, in order to further his training. He worked several matches for ICWA, International Championship Wrestling Alliance, as Sid Powers. After leaving Florida, he returned to the USWA, under the name Doomsday. And then on October 10th in 1993, he worked a dark match for WWE using his actual name, which is obviously Glenn Jacobs, defeating Mike Bell on an episode of WWF Superstars, which was taped in Burlington, Vermont. By December of that year, 2 months later, he wrestled in Japan for Pro Wrestling Fujiwara Gumi under his real name. Now, by 1994, he began wrestling for Tri-State Wrestling, which is a promotion in Central City, Kentucky, and the Indianapolis-based Championship Wrestling as Doomsday, as well as making a handful of other appearances in Japan. By May of 1994, he relocated to Puerto Rico to wrestle for the WWC, World Wrestling Council, as Doomsday. And then by 1995, he went on to work for Smoky Mountain Wrestling, which was ran by Jim Cornette. And he stayed with the promotion pretty much throughout that entire year under the name Unabomb. And then by and then and then by February of 1995, he went to WWE under the name Mike Unabomb, before ultimately being changed as Dr. Isaac Yankum DDS, who was Jerry Lawler's private dentist. And this actually lasted for quite some time before ultimately debuting in 1997 as Kane. Yes, you heard me right, as Kane. In fact, the build-up actually dates back to when The Undertaker, another fellow Hall of Famer, went on to work a simmering rivalry not only with WWE Hall of Famer Bret the Hitman Hart, but also with the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels and the late great Paul Bearer. Paul Bearer had kept saying that his brother Kane was alive and well. He did not get caught in the crosshairs of a house fire that apparently Paul Bearer claimed that it was The Undertaker who did it. So by October of 1997, WWE hosted a pay-per-view called In Your House, Bad Blood. On that night, we saw The Undertaker battle Shawn Michaels inside Hell in a Cell. Now, not only was this the end of the rivalry between the two, but the winner would face Bret Hart at Survivor Series in Montreal for the WWE title. This was where Kane emerged with Paul Bearer and attacked The Undertaker, hitting him with a tombstone, which allowed Shawn Michaels to win that number one contender's spot. Which, obviously, once we got to Montreal, you guys already know what happens there. Right after Bad Blood, Kane started to rack up a plethora of victories over the next several months, including against superstars the likes of Goldust, the likes of Ken Shamrock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and many others thereafter. The rivalry between Kane and The Undertaker led to what many people can consider to be the worst match of all time at WrestleMania 14 in 1998. In fact, that match took place, I believe, on March 29th, and then obviously Undertaker went, I believe 7-0 if I remember correctly. Yeah, that was when he went 7-0 at WrestleMania. Obviously, Kane and The Undertaker Kane and Paul Bearer attacked The Undertaker thereafter. But after WrestleMania, their feud kind of escalated even further until In Your House Unforgiven just a month later. Just less than a month later, which featured the first ever Inferno match, to which Kane lost. After that, Kane and the man they called Vader had a match at In Your House Over the Edge on May 31st. At the end of May, just yet another month later, in a mask versus mask match, to which Vader ultimately lost. By June 1st of that year, on an episode of Raw is War, Kane defeated The Undertaker to become the number one contender for the WWE title, which that match would take place at King of the Ring on June 28th. Kane would ultimately defeat Stone Cold Steve Austin in a first blood match following the interferences of Mankind and The Undertaker to ultimately win the WWE title. However, the following night, Stone Cold Steve Austin regained the title. By the summer of that year, by the summer of that year, The Undertaker was involved in a series of beatdowns from Mick Foley, aka Mankind, which ultimately led to Kane joining forces with The Undertaker to form the Brothers of Destruction. Obviously, things kind of escalated between the two a bit, and then by September 27th at In Your House Breakdown, Kane, Undertaker, and Stone Cold Steve Austin competed in a triple threat for the WWE title, to which both brothers were prohibited from pinning each other. So they had to pin Stone Cold Steve Austin, and they did that at the same time. Thus, both men won the match, but unfortunately, Stone Cold Steve Austin was ultimately still the WWE champion. Obviously, Kane had went on to do several other things, including turning babyface after The Undertaker betrayed Kane, turning his back on him for Paul Bearer once again. This led to The Undertaker forming arguably one of the most iconic factions of the Attitude Era, known as the Ministry of Darkness. By that point, another faction that rivaled that of the Ministry of Darkness, known as the Corporation, had decided to put Kane into an insane asylum, in which case, not long after that, in December in 1998, Kane joined the Corporation, turning him heel, which led to him having having a rivalry with Triple H and China, which led to a match at WrestleMania 15. China ended up leaving DX for the Corporation, as did Triple H. Kane then formed a team with X-Pac and acquired a girlfriend known as Tori. Can't speak. Kane and X-Pac ended up becoming tag team champions before X-Pac ultimately turned on Kane. So by WrestleMania 2000, Kane joined forces with Rikishi to defeat DX members X-Pac and the Road Dogg Jesse James in a very crazy matchup. However, Paul Bearer returned to WWE later on that year. Later on in around 1999, around 2000, joining forces with Kane once again. Obviously, Kane had a huge impact on the Attitude Era, not only becoming tag team champions with X-Pac, not only becoming WWE champion, but also becoming hardcore champion at WrestleMania X7, known as WrestleMania 17. And it's weird because for the longest time, when you really look at it, Kane returned to WWE on May 29th 2000, when he helped the Undertaker and The Rock fight off the McMahon Helmsley faction, and his involvement in the feud culminated with him having a main event match at King of the Ring on June 25th against Vince and Shane McMahon and the then WWE champion Triple H. Obviously Kane and Undertaker's rivalry resurfaced, which allowed Kane to turn heel, assaulting the Undertaker, which led to a match against each other at SummerSlam on August 22nd. And then for the remainder of the year, Kane stayed in contention for the WWE title, which led to Kane having a rivalry with Chris Jericho that led to them facing each other at a Survivor Series on November 19th. And then 1 month later, at a pay-per-view called Rebellion on December 2nd, he ultimately lost a last man standing match against Jericho at Armageddon on December 10th. So he had 3 matches with Chris Jericho. Survivor Series on November 19th, Rebellion on December 12th, and then just a week later at Armageddon on December 10th. Kane turned babyface once again by reforming his alliance with The Undertaker immediately after the Royal Rumble on January 21st, 2001. This led to Kane competing in a triple threat for the Hardcore Championship at WrestleMania X7 against Raven and the Big Show. Ultimately, Kane pinning the Big Show to win said Hardcore title. Later on that night, Triple H lost to The Undertaker in an instant classic. The Brothers of Destruction went on to become tag team champions by defeating Edge and Christian, which ultimately led to a winners take all match at Backlash. The Brothers of Destruction versus the Intercontinental Champion and the WWE Champion, respectively, Triple H and Stone Cold Steve Austin, known as the two-man power trip. Kane ended up winning the Intercontinental Championship from Triple H on May 22nd at Judgment Day, but ultimately losing the title to Albert on June 28th. Fast forward a little bit to the summer. At that time, The Undertaker's wife at that time, named Sarah, was being stalked by Diamond Dallas Page. This led to Kane and The Undertaker defeating a team known as Chronic to win, defeating Diamond Dallas Page and Kanyon in a steel cage match to win the WCW tag team titles. Just a month later, at Unforgiven, they retained the tag team titles against Chronic in a crazy matchup. This led to one of the biggest matches in Survivor Series history, which was the traditional Survivor Series elimination match, winner take all. Team Alliance versus Team WWE. The Alliance featured Kurt Angle, Booker T, Shane McMahon, the then Hardcore Champion Rob Van Dam, and the then WWE Champion Stone Cold Steve Austin. With Team WWE, you had Chris Jericho, The Big Show, the Brothers of Destruction, and the then WCW Champion, The Rock. The Rock ultimately pinned Stone Cold Steve Austin to be the sole survivor, ultimately putting WCW out of business. By 2002, by March of 2002, not long after WrestleMania, WWE was divided the brands up into two separate brands on their own, Raw and SmackDown. Kane obviously being drafted to Raw shortly thereafter, having a rivalry with the NWO, the New World Order, forcing Kane to act literally human to his fans, literally being human and talking through his mask, and referring to his fans as Canaanites, which was very, very funny. So by August later that year, after his rivalry with the NWO, he returns to Raw with a much more different version of his mask than we were accustomed to in the Attitude Era. By September 23rd that year, Kane and Shane Helms, formerly known as the Hurricane, went on to defeat the Un-Americans, Lance Storm and Christian, for the World Tag Team titles. Kane then went on, literally one week later, Kane defeats Chris Jericho to win the Intercontinental Championship, making him a double champion. In spite of the interference from Triple H and Ric Flair. Kane on October 7th on Raw, he single-handedly defended the tag team titles in a fatal 4-way TLC match that featured that literally featured three of the absolute best teams on Raw, including, I believe, Jericho and Christian, Jeff Hardy and Bubba Ray Dudley, and then there was one other team. One other team, but how did he do that? Well, unfortunately, Triple H and Ric Flair attacked Shane Helms earlier in that night. By October, he then started to feud with Triple H, which led to a match at No Mercy, in which case both Kane's Intercontinental title and Triple H's World Heavyweight title were on the line. And apparently, that's when the whole Katie Vick storyline came to pass. Not gonna go into details on that. Fast forward to 2003, when Kane formed a team with Rob Van Dam, ultimately becoming the World Tag Team Champions by defeating Chief Morley and Lance Storm in a triple threat elimination match, which involved the Dudleys. And by the time we got to Sunday Night Heat at WrestleMania, Kane and Rob Van Dam defended the tag team titles against Lance Storm and someone else. I don't remember who it was. I don't remember. Well, I think it was Chief Morley, which ultimately Kane and Rob Van Dam lost the titles because of the Dudley Boys. This led to Kane having a match with Triple H for the world title on Raw, to which if he lost, he had to take his mask off and he had no choice but to do so. But he ultimately turned heel, choke slamming the holy hell out of Rob Van Dam. Not long after that, Kane went on to have a series of matches as a heel against guys like Shane McMahon, which took place in a Last Man Standing match, and then again Vince and then of course again Shane McMahon at Survivor Series in an ambulance match And later that night, Kane helped Vince McMahon bury the Undertaker alive, which led to his match with his brother at WrestleMania 20. By 2004, 2005, he started to have a storyline with Lita, marrying her and getting her pregnant. This led to obviously, having matches with Edge and Matt Hardy, who both had a love for Lita. This led to Kane having a steel cage match with, I believe, Matt. I think with Matt Hardy, with either Edge or Matt Hardy, and it just escalated. It just escalated to where Edge ultimately started to marry Lita, and then Kane was not happy about it. Obviously, but that ended up going a little bit further until Kane was sidelined for several months after Snitsky crushed his larynx with a chair during the match. This storyline with Lita and Edge and Matt Hardy and Snitsky and and Lita's pregnancy. This led to Glenn Jacobs taking time off to work his role in the movie See No Evil, which would be released on May 9th, which I believe would be released on May 19th, if I remember right. I don't remember. I think it would take place. I think the movie was released sometime in October. But by 2005, in January at New Year's Revolution, Kane returned and defeated Snitsky, which led to Kane once again putting himself back in a rivalry with Edge. So by later that year, fast forward many months later in 2005, Kane and Big Show had huge chemistry together, ultimately becoming the World Tag Team Champions, to which they retained the titles at WrestleMania 22 in Chicago against Chris Masters and Carlito. By 2007, Kane was in a rivalry with the Great Khali, and this ultimately allowed Kane to bring in a hook, which was used in his movie See No Evil. At the time, JBL actually handpicked Kane to make an appearance on SmackDown as a handpicked opponent for Rey Mysterio, who at the time was the World Heavyweight Champion. This led to Kane in 2006 having the deal with an imposter version of himself, which we all know about that. By 2007, I want to say by 2006, later on in 2006, Kane returned at SummerSlam, attacking Umaga, who interfered in a match that featured DX taking on Vince McMahon and Shane McMahon in a very odd tag team match. So by 2008, Kane ultimately went over to ECW, won a battle royal at WrestleMania 24, and defeated Chavo Guerrero that same night to become ECW champion. You heard me right. In 2008, that actually happened. But around 2006 and 2007, the Brothers of Destruction reunited, taking on MVP and Mr. Kennedy, which led to Kane and MVP having a series of matches that ultimately led to Armageddon 2006, I want to say, in an Inferno match, and then Undertaker versus Mr. Kennedy in a last ride match, to which the only way to win is to put your opponent in the back of a hearse and walk off. Literally. Yeah, that pretty much happened. So, fast forward again to 2008. Kane ends up becoming ECW champion, and then everything started to go up for Kane later on. By 2009, by 2009, he started to have a series of other matches in WWE and in ECW against guys like Mark Henry and Kofi Kingston, the Great Khali at SummerSlam in 2009, to which I know about that because I was there. And then by 2010, The Undertaker ended up in a vegetative state for some odd reason. No one knows what happened. Kane ultimately wins Money in the Bank in 2010 at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, cashing in on the same night on Rey Mysterio. Kane believed that it was Rey who did it, but The Undertaker knew better, and it ended up being Kane in the process. This led to Paul Bearer returning, joining forces with The Undertaker, but ultimately joining forces with Kane at Hell in a Cell, costing The Undertaker the matchup. Kane decided to put Paul Bearer in a cooler, removing him from the picture entirely. Fast forward now to 2011, I want to say. Kane ends up getting injured at the hands of Mark Henry. This put him on the shelf for several months until 2012. He shows up with gear similar to the gear he wore in the Attitude Era, with a much different mask. And from that point forward, he went on. He continued his career wearing that same mask. Not only competing in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal at WrestleMania 32, but also becoming tag team champions with Daniel Bryan, forming the team name Team Hell No. And then ultimately, by 2018, in fact, if I remember correctly, it was on September 1st, 2018. He ended up being voted as the new mayor of Knox County, which is located in Tennessee, and he was preceded by Tim Burchett. So shout outs to him. And during his time as the mayor of Knox County, he went on to win one more championship in WWE. But that championship ultimately became the 24/7 championship, which did not last long, as R-Truth regained the title from Glenn Jacobs. And then by 2021, Kane ultimately got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. The last time Kane made an appearance in WWE was in 2023, when SmackDown would take place in Knoxville, Tennessee, and Kane ultimately gave the then SmackDown Women's Champion Bianca Belair the key to the city. And yes, that is the story of Glenn Jacobs, formerly known as Kane. And as far as like what the future holds for him, I mean, there are so many possibilities. apparently he's been signed to a Legends contract with WWE, but we really don't know if he's going. We don't know if we'll see him back in the ring again, and no one really knows. No one really knows. But what I do know is that Kane has done a hell of a job as the mayor of Knox County. So big shoutouts to him. Shoutouts to Kane on such an impactful career in WWE. Again, dating back to his time in the Attitude Era, leading to his induction in the Hall of Fame. And 2021 was pretty much where he ultimately retired, but apparently people believe that he still has one more match left in him, but I don't really see it that way. Although to be fair, I think the way he became mayor of Knox County was his time turning heel, joining forces with Triple H and Seth Rollins and The Big Show in the Authority as the director of operations. So I think that's how he got it, but I'm not entirely sure. But I want you guys to let me know down in the comments below your favorite Kane moment, and also answer the question of the day, which is this: if Kane were to have one more match in WWE, who do you think his last opponent would be, and why? Let me know down in the comments below, and that'll do it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button. If you guys are new to the channel and you guys want more WWE superstar profile stories, if you will, in the future, then be sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and as always, make sure you guys are following me on all my social media. All of my ads will be in the description below, as will the info to my fan mail. It will also be in the description as well. And on that, this is your boy Nash, signing out.